Newsflash, leftism doesn't work. Like, duh.
Frustration has spilled over in community meetings. Anger often directed at leadership, like the newly elected district attorney, who has been on the job just 7 months.
It's unreal.
I'm a black man born and raised in Oakland. When I walk out the house every day, I want to be safe. So if that calls for whoever commits the crime to be prosecuted, so be it. But we want it to be fair and just.
Darren White is with the NAACP Oakland branch, which penned an open letter to their city, blaming failed leadership, the defund the police movement, and anti-police rhetoric for creating a heyday for Oakland criminals.
We're not trying to say, mass incarceration and arrest everyone. We want the people that are out here committing these violent crimes arrested and charged.
Do we need more cops on the street?
Yes, we do need more. Every community needs police.
Flanked by partners in the city, Oakland's interim police chief Darren Allison says Oakland is taking a comprehensive approach to fighting crime.
They all say that the crime feels different now. Why is that?
So I think because it is pervasive, not just localized, or we may have historically seen maybe gang group violence, that I think that feeling has become that it's everywhere.
From cops to crime prevention. Funded for 712 officers, Allison says he has 715 on staff.
So what you're seeing is changes in bail, changes in sentencing.
Are you saying you need tougher punishment on the back end?
It's everything. It's not just enforcement and punishment. I think accountability comes in many forms.
Grace and peace, you guys. April Chapman here with the Standard of Truth podcast, and I'm gonna just come on out and say it, right? Because I ain't never scared. Do we need another crime bill? Like, I'm just asking. And the reason why I want to talk about the 1994 crime bill, because my fellow conservatives, rightfully so, had sharp criticism for the current administration regarding all of the black folks that got locked up from that 1994 crime bill that Joe Biden helped author during the Clinton administration. And I understand how conservatives use that as a political point to garner support and to push against the opposition. And I get it. I understand how detrimental that 94 crime bill was. However, we are currently now living at a time when crime is out of control. You see here in the video that I've displayed that the city of Oakland is just wrought with crime, violent crime. The residents of the city no longer feel safe. And I find it funny that the NAACP, who was one of the main proponents of the defund the police movement, has now come out with a statement begging for more police presence and actually admitting on record that defunding the police was a bad idea. Now, we could have told you that, right? Those of us who still have blood flowing through our brains and the good sense that the good Lord gave us, we could have told you that. And when we tried to say, listen, defunding the police is not the answer, right, to a bad apple on a police force where an injustice may have occurred, instead of thinking in proper categories by saying, why can't we just deal with every incident on its own merit? No, instead, liberals wanted and went on a mass campaign to spread the message of defunding the police. And what did black folks do? They jumped on that bandwagon to their own detriment. And now in cities such as LA and Oakland and San Francisco and New York and even here in Atlanta, we are living in the craziest crime spurge that has probably been the worst in my lifetime, outside of the late 80s and early 90s before Rudy Giuliani came into office into New York City. So here are a couple of points that I want to bring up. The NAACP is being hypocrites right now. I have been telling you that the NAACP, they are the gatekeepers. They're the ones that are actually committed to keeping Black folks blinded and ignorant to the truth. For the NAACP to champion the defund the police movement, and then now that it is hit home to people living in this community, now all of a sudden they want to be like, well, I mean, I'm not saying we need to have mass incarceration, but we kind of do want the violent criminals to be locked up. Well, no kidding. That is all we've ever advocated. But in an effort to push your agenda, you have now put your people in harm's way, and now you're forced to actually walk back those statements. My question to you, NAACP, national and the local chapters, are you getting this message over to the likes of Ayanna Pressley or Cori Bush, all of the members of the squad, the AOCs? Are you preaching that same thing to them? Because those smart scholars are still advocating for defunding the police in some form or fashion. Now, I get it. People who are going to come and say, when we were talking about defund the police, we weren't saying less police. We were saying, let's just take some of that money from the police and divert it into social programs to maybe help individuals who are suffering from mental illness. Or maybe we could have like the social workers show up when we're dealing with the situation where an individual might be violent and they're threatening. If we could just dispatch a social worker, they could kind of work alongside the police. I'm sorry, no. Criminals on some level cannot be reasoned with prior to you restraining them from inflicting harm on individuals. It requires a level of force to restrain a lunatic who is either flailing a gun or threatening bodily harm to innocent civilians. You need a strong and well-equipped, well-funded, well-trained police presence. I am sorry. Dispatching social workers and making sure that the mental health professional is on site when there's a violent crime occurring, such as, or just someone just being a petty thief and wanting to carjack somebody or wanting to walk into somebody's business. I don't see how the social worker or the mental health professional is going to restrain the wickedness in such a person's heart. Let me just explain to you why I believe this is a prime example of a dereliction of duty from the government. Newsflash, I am a small government supporter. I'm not an anarchist where I don't want any government. I believe the government should play the rightful role as scripture outlines, which is to restrain the lawless and to punish the wicked doer. Let me go ahead and read something to you from Romans chapter 13. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. So here, government authorities, I recognize your God-ordained rightful place in my life as a believer and in society overall. I recognize that. The scriptures tell me that there's no authority except from God, and the power and the authority that you've been granted was given to you by the Most High. It also goes on to say, therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. Meaning, if you break the law and you resist the authority that has been put in place, you best to be prepared for the consequences that result. It then goes on to say, for rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Meaning, the governing authorities, such as the police, right, or even the military, they are not there unless you're doing something bad. They're not a terror to good conduct. If you're following the law and you're doing what you're supposed to do, you ain't got to worry about the police. But then it says, would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. for he is God's servant for your good. The police have been given to us as a gift from God for our good. They are not the enemy. So the entire defund the police movement was retarded on the outset because it flied in the face of a declarative statement here that's like, listen, the police are really, they're not the bad guys. That's not saying that there's not wickedness bound up in the heart of a particular individual. That is true because these authorities that have been instituted by God they are human. They are fallen sons and daughters of Adam, which means the wickedness in their heart needs to be regulated and restrained too. That's why I always say, why can't we just punish the bad apples? Why do we have to just demonize all police? But my kinsman, according to the flesh, likes listening to the mainstream narrative that led you to believe that black folks was just getting tumbled and pummeled down in the street for no good reason at all. They didn't do nothing. They were just murdering us for no reason when we know that wasn't happening. But then the scripture goes, then do what is good and you will receive his approval, for he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. The sword, the firearm, whatever instrument of restraint that the police are using, that could be a taser, that could be pepper spray, whatever they are using, they exist and they don't bear those weapons in vain, meaning they have them with the intent to use them if necessary. For he is a servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Well, now we are finding out that these wrongdoers are actually targeting law-abiding citizens. And now the citizens are speaking up. And now the NAACP is forced to go on record, at least this local chapter has, to say, you know what? I don't think defund the police was a good idea. Listen, at the end of the day, anti-police rhetoric puts a damper on the profession of policing. There was once a time in this country where being a police officer was an honorable job. It was an honest job. It was a respectable profession. But when you have heavy anti-police rhetoric from the left, all that does is hurt all the people at the bottom, the ones who live and work and are trying to thrive in their own communities. We need to restore confidence in the police again. We need to stop the anti-police rhetoric because it is hurtful. But this is why I say, when I tell you leftism doesn't work, leftist policies don't work, this fake kumbaya like utopia that leftism preaches about, it's unreal and it doesn't exist. You have to have a healthy balance between the law and the constituents. You do. You cannot have our anarchy or be soft on crime. This is why the government exists, to restrain the lawbreaker and to punish the evildoer. It is unsustainable. And now you can clearly see with this story coming out of Oakland that the people on the ground realize that this is incredible. I can't live like this anymore. And now they're putting pressure on the police to do something. And then what do you see? You see the police actually saying, well, we've got a comprehensive approach. We don't know what that means. What is a comprehensive approach to fighting crime? I need more specifics, because that just sounds like more leftist rhetoric that says, well, we're going to use the police, but we're also going to bring in the mental health professionals and the social workers and the safe space keepers. Like, no, we need good old fashioned lock up the lawbreaker, put them in jail, and then prosecute them effectively, right? So you need the district attorney's office working in conjunction with the local law enforcement to deal with the crime. So I'm not castigating the statement made by the police officer, but I have questions. I need to know. I don't know what comprehensive approach means, right? All these lofty terms for the media sound good, but let's put some weight behind those words. What you mean when you say that? What does comprehensive mean? I need to know if that includes arresting them, putting them in jail, prosecuting them, and then handing out a sentence. Like I just have questions. This is why I say these people are incapable of leading you, and that for the believer, for the Christian, we need to get our marching orders and how to govern ourselves from the scriptures. Because when you put your faith in princes, when you put your faith in these civic or civil rights organizations, they will steer you wrong. How are you claiming to be the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and then you put your full support behind a movement such as defund the police? That should have told black folks right there, like, I ain't sending out another dime. I ain't marching with you. I'm not standing locking arms with you because you're not making any sense. The whole idea of defunding the police doesn't even make sense. But this melanin is blinding. This melanin is blinding, and you feel that you can align yourself and have allegiance to a group whose name sounds like they're on your side without using the discernment that you're supposed to have as a Christian to say, well, wait a minute, you want to advance colored people, but why is it that all the programs that you support are detrimental to the advancement of colored people, such as Planned Parenthood and, I don't know, defund the police? But that ain't what this video is about. I will continue. I want to use this as an opportunity to explain to people why elections have consequences. Elections have consequences is because when you go into an election, not with your eyes wide open and having the scriptures govern and guide your decisions, you are prone to idolatry, which says, I'm going to check the box for the person that looks like me. And then you end up putting blind trust in the people that look like you. And then when the people that look like you betray you and they don't honor their part, or at least, no, that's not true. Some of them are honoring their part. Let me explain why. But let me finish that thought. The thought that I was saying is, when they don't do what you expect them to do, you're now upset. But these people never misrepresented themselves. They told you exactly who they were when you elected them. Let's take, for example, Alvin Bragg. All of these Soros-funded district attorneys told you who they were. They told you they are light on crime. These people were not interested in applying the law in a judicial and fair-minded manner. They told you that they were all about social justice. They were never interested in applying the law equally. They served a particular function, and it was to use their office's authority to weaponize the justice system against people that they did not like. They were not interested in keeping you safe. Alvin Bragg has demonstrated that by not prosecuting violent crimes. This district attorney in the San Francisco Bay Area, or Oakland area, I should say, is demonstrating by her just sitting up there looking silly and silent that I'm a tool. I was not brought into this position to keep you safe. I have to do the job of the people that are pulling the puppet strings. They have a lot of George Soros money. Right here in Atlanta, the district attorney, she don't prosecute violent crimes either. It's funny how the things she chooses to prosecute are not the things that we need her to prosecute. She is literally just a tool, just an extended arm of political weaponization. And we, you, the constituents, the law-abiding citizens, we are the ones that have to suffer the consequences. So, the anti-police rhetoric, you are now seeing the fruits of that. It wasn't maybe 24 to 36 months ago, during the summer of love, when it was all of the anti-police rhetoric going on after the George Floyd situation happened. You know, the police rhetoric ticked up a notch, and it was no longer honorable to protect and serve. It was now the police are the enemies. Well, now Now the chickens have come home to roost. Our cities are less safe. And now we actually need a federal crime bill. We actually need one now. We actually need someone to come in with the strong arm of the law to overcorrect the harmful rhetoric of 2020. I grew up in Mayor Giuliani's New York City. And yes, a lot of people gave him criticism for his stop and frisk. But you know what? People who was obeying the law, we ain't had no problem with stop and frisk. It was under reasonable suspicion. You looked like you was up to no good. Yes, there could have been racial profiling done as a result of that. I'm not ignorant to the fact that people hold inherent biases. However, it kept the city safe. It cleaned up New York City to where you could actually go as a tourist and not have to worry about getting your head knocked off. And if you lived in the city, you knew you could go down to Times Square, you could go to Broadway, you could go to 42nd Street and just enjoy yourself or with a family afternoon in the city. Why? Because Mayor Giuliani restored a level of healthy respect and a godly fear and reverence for the governing authorities, i.e., the police. So, I get it. My criticism is sharp. A lot of y'all don't like my point of view, but I'm asking the question, do we need another crime bill? Was Joe Biden's crime bill the worst thing ever? Yes, it had some unintended consequences. There was a whole lot of black folks, particularly the crack cocaine era, that were locked up. Plenty of my family members got the clink, right? Now, they were doing wrong. What if we just instituted a fair and balanced crime bill? Or, I don't know. This is a novel thought. What if we just prosecuted the wrongdoers? Like the people that was breaking the law? Do we? Maybe we don't. Maybe we need a crime bill. Maybe we don't. But we need something because this is unsustainable. People cannot live in constant and perpetual fear like this. It is not good for your physical health. When you are literally afraid for your life and you live in a perpetual state of fight or flight, it is not good. And none of us are exempt, right? Like we can kind of keep moving and moving further out into the suburbs, but the crime is in the suburbs now too. So what is the solution? The solution is that we need to start voting for our elected officials with our brains and not these flighty emotions in our hearts. Apply the rule of law in the most fair and balanced way possible, using the scriptures as your guide. If a person is telling you who they are, you need to believe them. If they're telling you, I think that we should be a sanctuary city, that's bad. We can't do that. We need a border. We need to keep our people safe. If people are saying that, I just really think we need to reason with the criminals and not lock them up. They're telling you who they are. Can't vote for you. No, we ain't reasoning with criminals. You need to spend some time in jail and think about what you did. The part that I feel bad about the most are all the small business owners. You guys have no idea what it's like to start and build and try to sustain a business based off of your own efforts. And some ignit comes in and wants to just start ripping stuff off of your shelves or start vandalizing your place of business that feeds your family, that provides you the opportunity to educate your children and just contribute to society as a solid American citizen. You have no idea the level of violation and disrespect that a person feels when they are violated in such a manner. I feel for the small business owners who now see that running a small business is too risky. So then that means that the large corporations get to come in because they can take on the risk and the shrinkage of the inventory that just flies out the window because people just want to come in and steal it. I feel for those small business owners. I feel for the single moms, right, who don't have the protection, of a husband or a single woman who doesn't have the protection of her dad. Like this just impacts communities on so many different levels. The children are impacted. Parents don't want to go out and enjoy a family afternoon because they're like, listen, if we go to the fair, something might pop off and we just don't know. So we can't go. But here's my admonishment and my encouragement. If you are a Christian, don't live in fear. Live your life recognizing that God is sovereign, but keep your head on the swivel. Keep Jesus in your heart and your nine on your hip. And I mean that with all sincerity. I don't leave home without Purple Rain. She's either on my hip or she is in the Michael Kors purse, right? And I stay prayed up because the last thing I want to do is to have to use a weapon by force against someone who wishes me harm. But please believe it, I ain't trigger happy, but I ain't afraid to pull the trigger. Y'all be blessed and let me know, what do you think in the comment section. I am eager to hear from you. Do you think we need another crime bill or a modification of it? Listen, I get it. That crime bill was serious. And I used the crime bill, right, as a political talking point against Joe Biden because Biden is racist. However, conservatives, those of us on the right, we did use that 94 crime bill as a way to score political points against our opponent. But on some level, was the crime bill that bad? Everybody was begging for relief. And now here we are. Can we get a bipartisan effort going to get a crime bill? Because these criminals need to go to jail. Lock them all up. But y'all let me know if I'm off base. I'm open to pushback and disagreement. Grace and peace.